pages long.
Yeah.
So that was another one of our discussions. It was actually recommended to only have papers that are like 2 to 3 pages. That way it's higher quality writing
At the 5th semester.
at that 5th semester.
Less fluff, more substance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just a thought, they may, that disparity in length may represent different priorities in terms of content or accuracy. So that, presumably that will be something that's flushed out.
Great, and just to conclude, just to talk about some of the things we've done thus far, I mentioned the survey. It was do you remember, Lance? Do you remember how long that survey was? It was 16, 12 questions maybe, 11 questions?
12 to 15, I would say, yeah.
And it was just to gauge what the current practices were. And there was an alarming deficiency, I think, in formal assessment of student writing. Again, as Denise said, it's very often just a question of intuition and feeling, whether or not students are hitting the mark. We've had 2 iterations of a writing subcommittee now, I believe. There's one through the CSRLC, and then there's another one proposed for the summer. We still have some summer work to do on this. But we feel like we've made a lot of progress in getting our colleagues to be enthusiastic about this. We had the oral proficiency assessment of our assessment of oral proficiency last year, and I think it was overwhelmingly popular. I know a lot of we had a rubric that was created through that committee, and I know a lot of our colleagues are using that. As I mentioned, we've seen various drafts of a rubric. We're still trying to come up with one that's perfect. It's quite a challenge to come up with something that can be modified and used in all different languages. And in some of the work we've seen, a lot of our peer institutions actually have several rubrics based on various genres of writing at various levels, which is an enormous task, but we're still trying to work through things. We have brought in experts from elsewhere. I don't know, am I giving away too much, Sean? Okay. We've brought in some experts on the field, some colleagues at other peer institutions to help us. So we're having conversations now with other institutions about what current practices are elsewhere and about how to really make the most out of what we're doing. And the next step that we have is summer work. We're still going on, as I said, to try to come up with a list of best practices and a list of and a decent rubric that we can use. Do we have time for an activity? Maybe, or
Maybe just
well, let me just say what I thought we could do for an activity. I was thinking, I'm sure a lot of departments already have student learning outcomes. If you don't, it might be interesting to have a look at the draft that I included in this packet here, this packet of 2 pages. You can have a look at that and see about maybe adapting that to your own language and level. Maybe to start a conversation in your department to perhaps write these. These, as I said, they were written in conjunction with the ACTFL guidelines. I have a copy of the ACTFL guidelines if anyone wants to look at it today. I don't think we ever really have time for an activity today, but this might be something you can do in the future with your colleagues some point down the road of the semester. Any questions or comments?
I was just going to add 2 things, if it's of any help, because we went through this on one front. We are, sleeves rolled up with, writing now. So we're learning in the middle of it. But we did write our learning goals, learning outcomes, even at the advanced level. So if you want to click on Romance Language website under undergraduate studies, it says learning goals. So you find something like this for the language end, for the advanced, and we shared rubrics through oral proficiency. We hope to, in the next year or so through this, put some writing out there. So anything we can do to share or work together. There's some places on our website that might help open up some conversations within your department. But we've also gone through this activity at the upper level. So you would find both the language and the advanced end of our programs posted on our websites.
Thank you.
If it's of help.
Class, when you say advanced level,
We have learning goals posted on our website for the 30 and 40,000 level courses, and we have rubrics that are being used by our TNR to teach 30 and 40,000 level courses also.
I'm glad Shauna mentions that. For those of you who are involved in the assessment project, I think it's good to go and start looking at these, and I'm thrilled that Patrick has shared this hard topic today. But we're going to have a series of mini conferences both here at Notre Dame and hopefully with our colleagues at Georgetown to do exactly this, to sort of compare notes, to share best practices, to talk about where we had challenges and where we had success. So I think that's well put. If I could as well, you brought up a really interesting point earlier, and I've been peripherally involved in some of the writing assessment work, and I did see some of the responses to the survey. And what struck me, you talked about how, in some ways there's real deficiency in terms of people not really doing anything formally, just sort of basing their assessment activities for writing on intuition. But I also saw the latter, or the alternative, the reverse, which is people spending enormous amounts of time putting enormous amounts of marginal comments in, going through enormous numbers of drafts. And so I think that needs to be stated. And then a recurring theme that many of you have already heard from me is that all of this stuff, these sort of pedagogy workshops and anything else where we get together and we talk best practices, it's not about distinguishing what works and what doesn't. I don't think anything that anybody is doing doesn't work. It's about making sure that what you're doing is the most efficient. And I don't mean to reduce it to some sort of industrial model of efficiency, but let's be honest here. We have 4 hours a week with these kids to get them to a pretty significant level, as evidenced by either our stated learning outcomes or our imagined ones, our shared imagined ones. And that's a pretty enormous task. So what these sorts of techniques do, and I think the Oral Proficiency Project is an excellent example of that, they looked at a technology that allowed them to facilitate something in a feasible manner, to do something more without expending more energy, and to streamline some of that process. And I think that's a really important sort of consideration to keep in mind as we go through all of these skill sets and all of these disciplines.
Yeah, in addition to that, reading through the comments on the survey, there's a lot of enthusiasm on the part of the faculty. They want something that can be used at all levels to formally assess student writing. So I think our work is probably the right work.
Well, please keep your question and give a round of applause for And if you have any other questions for both presenter and certainly our third presenter upcoming, feel free to email them or email me as well, and I will forward. And this is our last presenter who made it and finally made it after class, Professor Rabab El-Nady.
Hi everyone, my name is Rabab and I'm teaching Arabic in the Arabic program in the Department of Classics. And I'll be presenting today on teaching writing using YouTube, digital stories, and blogs. And I'll model how I combine the three in an advanced class. The name of the class was Advanced Composition and Conversation. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is YouTube, and of course you're all familiar with YouTube. So can anyone tell us what YouTube is?
A way to waste time.
Very good point to see it. Very good way to see it.
It's a site where anyone can post videos, basically. From my grandson, who's 7, to...
So it's actually a website containing enormous amount of video content, as we said, and you can see it as a way of wasting time. But also you can see it as a way or as a tool you can use in your classroom. So can you see any educational benefits of YouTube at all? Any educational
Authentic
benefits?
material.
Authentic material.
Tons of authentic
Culture.
material.
The enormity of options, it's amazing.
Exactly. So actually, since these are free videos and we have them about various topics, we have them about the weather, about just random people posting things. You have them about everything you can imagine. So you can actually, these videos, you can reproduce them in the classroom. So you can simply in the class play one of the YouTube videos and then ask the students to have a similar conversation or to talk about the same topic in a similar way. Also, usually the students enjoy watching YouTube videos because they think that this is very motivating, this is very challenging for us, we really enjoy it. So that's a way actually to make the class more interesting. And as you mentioned,